The chandeliers inside Harmony Crescendo Hall sparkled above an elite crowd. Wealthy donors, orchestra directors, and international diplomats mingled with flutes of champagne. A grand Steinway sat center stage beneath a spotlight, untouched and gleaming. This was the most prestigious classical music rehearsal in New York. Backstage, a girl waited. She was 15, black, blind, dressed in a simple black dress. Her white cane tapped softly against the wooden floor as she stepped into the light. The moment she appeared, conversations stopped. At the edge of the stage, a man rose from his seat. His voice boomed like a slap across the hall. "She's blind and black. This isn't a street corner." Silence. The voice belonged to Reginald Ainsworth, a global icon, a white pianist whose performances sold out Carnegie Hall in minutes. Every journalist, every sponsor, every artist in that room knew his name. And yet, not one of them spoke. Some guests glanced awkwardly at one another. Others sipped their drinks like they hadn't heard. A few even nodded. No one stood up for her. Not the conductor, not the organizers, not the talent agents seated in the front row. And she? She didn't flinch. She didn't ask to explain herself. She didn't apologize for existing. She simply kept walking forward, one step at a time, her fingers brushing the edge of the air like she could feel the weight of every judgment hanging around her. Her name was Amara Bell, but no one had bothered to ask. Her white cane tapped once, then stopped. She was now standing in front of the Steinway. Her hand hovered an inch above the piano's surface. Reginald's voice cut again, sharper this time. "Don't let her touch that instrument. Do you know what that piano's worth? She's going to ruin it." Laughter. Just one chuckle. From someone in the back. It was enough to confirm that the insult wasn't just his. It belonged to all of them. No one moved. No one told him to stop. The air felt heavier than stone. Amara slowly lifted her head, though her cloudy eyes couldn't see the spotlight now fixed on her face. She didn't say a word, not even a whisper. She placed her cane gently beside the bench, and then she sat down, hands trembling slightly, breathing slow. She stretched her fingers above the keys, not touching yet, just feeling the space. From the sidelines, Reginald scoffed. "She won't even make it through the first bar. This is pathetic." Still, no one spoke. Even the technical crew at the back stayed frozen. The light operators didn't move. The conductor kept his eyes down. Everyone was waiting for her to fail. Everyone was prepared to look away. But then, just before she lowered her hands, she turned her head slightly toward the crowd. Not to find someone, just to feel if they were still breathing. And then her fingers dropped. But the screen went black. Because what she played next wasn't just a song. It was something else. And to understand it, we have to go back. Back before the Gala. Back before the Rejection. Back to a cracked keyboard in a forgotten corner of Philadelphia. Back to the girl who had no eyes, no spotlight, no applause. Only silence, and the will to play inside it. The rain in Philadelphia didn't fall. It clung to cracked windows, to street signs, to the corners of forgotten neighborhoods where nobody looked twice. Somewhere between North Fifth and Allegheny, inside a concrete group home that always smelled of wet socks and bleach, a girl sat on the cold front stoop, headphones over her ears and fingers dancing mid-air. 15 years old. Born blind. Orphaned at 3. Her name was Amara Bell. But she wasn't known for anything yet. In her hands, there was no piano, just air. But in her head, there was a full orchestra. Violins in one corner, brass behind her shoulder. She had memorized the layout of symphonies the way some girls memorize TikTok dances. Her keyboard? A thrift store donation with 3 busted keys and 2 missing legs. It leaned against the bedroom wall like it had already given up. She hadn't. In the common room of the home, other kids watched cartoons, argued over Wi-Fi, and scrolled through phones they got from caseworkers. Amara? She practiced pieces she had never seen, never been taught, never even heard live. She played them from vibrations and memory. The only adult who paid attention was Mr. Clifton, the old janitor with a military limp and soft eyes. He caught her once, sneaking into the basement where the music room was kept locked. "You know you're not allowed in here without a counselor," he'd said. "I know," she whispered. He watched her hesitate in the doorway. She never looked up. Her fingers were already tracing the air again. He didn't stop her. He didn't report her. From that night on, every Thursday after 9 p.m., Mr. Clifton would leave the door unlocked and disappear down the hall. That was her time. 40 minutes on an out-of-tune keyboard that smelled like dust and rust. But to her, it was sacred. She taught herself to play by watching old YouTube tutorials with audio descriptions. But more than that, she played through pressure. The pressure of silence, of invisibility, of being passed over at every school audition. Letters came every month. "We regret to inform you. We do not have the resources for your case. Not a cultural fit for our environment." Some didn't even bother signing names. She memorized the rejections like sheet music. When she turned 14, she applied to the Harmony Conservatory in Boston. She didn't expect a yes. What she got instead was worse, a conditional acceptance under their new Silent Observer program. No formal admission, no access to practice halls, no participation in recitals, no instruction, just permission to walk the halls and sit outside classrooms. Her social worker told her it was better than nothing. That first day, she stepped into the conservatory like a shadow walking through glass. The floor was marble. The ceilings echoed. Her cane tapped once, twice, then paused. Voices whispered as she passed. "Is she allowed here? She's blind. What's she gonna do? Listen to the piano? She should be in a program, not a conservatory." They laughed. No one stopped them. She kept walking. Every morning she sat outside room 2C, Music Theory and Composition, where Professor Daniels lectured behind a heavy door. Amara listened through cracks in the frame. She learned to identify chords by how they made the walls vibrate, learned tempo from the rhythm of footsteps across the polished floor. She never spoke to anyone, never knocked. But every day she stayed until the lights dimmed and the halls emptied. She would trace sonatas into the air, fingers curling and straightening, like they were dancing with ghosts. Some nights she stayed longer, just to feel the silence after the sound had gone. In that silence, she heard more than most people ever did. She heard that the world didn't care she could play, because it had already decided she shouldn't. And yet, she kept listening. She kept playing. Because sometimes, even when the whole world pretends you don't exist, one note, just one, is enough to prove you do. It happened on a Thursday. Amara was walking slowly down the second-floor hallway, her hand lightly brushing the cool stone wall to her left, cane tapping to her right. She had her headphones tucked under her collar. The audio was low, but her ears were trained to catch everything. Foot pressure, echoes, tone shifts in voices behind closed doors. She heard piano. Room 3D. The door wasn't locked. She turned the handle gently, stepped inside, and froze. 4 white students turned to her mid-rehearsal. One of them, a boy with perfect posture and a tailored vest, stood behind the Steinway. His fingers hovered over the keys like he was carving the air. "What the hell?" he said. "Who let her in here?" Amara opened her mouth, but couldn't find the words. Another student laughed. "Does she think this is an audition?" A third one chuckled. "She better not touch that piano." The boy stepped forward, blocking the keys with his body. "You can't be in here. This isn't daycare." "I'm sorry," she said quietly. He didn't let her pass. "They really letting anybody walk in now? What's next? A street drummer performing at Carnegie?" Amara backed up slowly, cane tapping the tile, but her hand brushed the side of the piano. The feel of the polished wood sent a shock through her chest. She wanted to play. Just once. "Don't even think about it," the boy snapped. "You don't touch this unless your name's on a scholarship." She let her hand fall, then turned around and walked out. No teacher intervened, no counselor heard. But down the hall, someone had seen everything. Professor Daniels stood in silence by the trophy case. He hadn't moved. He didn't make a scene. He just watched her leave, her shoulders stiff, her head down, but never shaking. That night, he found her in the hallway again. She was sitting cross-legged, back to the wall, her fingers drawing invisible keys on her thigh. He didn't interrupt. He waited. She stopped when she sensed his presence. "I wasn't trying to sneak in," she said softly. "I just wanted to feel what a real piano sounded like." He stepped closer. "Were you listening to my lecture again?" She nodded. "I heard you say a dominant 7th chord feels like it wants to go home." He smiled faintly. "You remembered that?" "I feel it. It pulls, like gravity." He paused, studying her face. Then, without another word, he gestured down the hallway. They walked in silence, past classrooms, past locked rehearsal spaces, past portraits of smiling white prodigies. At the end of the lower hallway was a rusted steel door. He pushed it open. They entered a basement storage room filled with folding chairs, broken music stands, and a single upright piano covered in dust. "This isn't a Steinway," he said, "but it plays." He pulled back the cover and stepped aside. Amara stood still. "You're letting me?" No syllabus, no rules, just sound. She moved forward like she was approaching something sacred. She sat down, touched the keys, and closed her eyes. Her fingers hovered, then dropped. It wasn't flawless, but it was alive. Professor Daniels didn't stop her. He sat in a metal chair behind her, hands folded. She didn't play Bach. She didn't play Chopin. She played something unnamed, something only she had ever heard, something born from silence and rejection and the long echo of her own heartbeat in empty dorm rooms. After she finished, he didn't clap. He simply said, "Play again." And she did. Every night that week, she returned. After hours, in secret, in silence. He taught her with breath, with foot taps, with metaphors. "Don't count the beats," he said. "Feel where the silence falls." He didn't ask her to play the right notes. He asked her to play the honest ones. He never gave her sheet music. She didn't need it. She didn't just memorize. She translated. And while the rest of the school studied theory and harmony and legacy, Amara studied the sound of her own survival. She didn't know it yet, but what they had begun in that basement would echo far beyond those cold brick walls. Because while the others practiced for applause, she was learning how to play for something much harder to win: the right to be heard. Spring crept into Boston slowly. The marble floors of Harmony Conservatory stayed cold, but something underneath them had started to warm. In a basement, no one visited. On a piano, no one claimed. A blind black girl was rewriting the definition of sound. Professor Daniels never treated her like a student. He treated her like a musician. Their lessons weren't scheduled. They happened when the halls were silent, and the ghosts of the school's pride weren't watching. He would tap rhythm on her palm. She would respond with fingers on keys. He would say, "A B-flat can feel like a lie if the chord before it was honest." She would nod, then replay the sequence with a slight change, as if correcting his memory, not his notes. She didn't need to hear a piece more than once. She didn't copy it. She absorbed it. But it wasn't just her speed that surprised him. It was the way she played grief, the way her fingers paused in the middle of melodies as if mourning the ones who were never allowed to play. One night he asked her, "Why do you play like this?" She didn't answer right away. Then, quietly, "Because no one listens when I speak." He said nothing after that. He didn't need to. That evening, she played a piece of her own. No title, no references, just her. It began soft, like footsteps on wet pavement. Then a broken chord, like something trying to form but failing. Her left hand moved slow and heavy. Her right hand fluttered, like a memory not fully formed. Daniels froze. It wasn't the notes. It was the feeling. She wasn't just expressing something. She was surviving it. He left the recorder running. When she finished, he didn't ask what it meant. He only said, "Play it again." Later that week, he uploaded that recording to an old faculty folder. No tags, no title, just a line. No eyes, just soul. No one noticed it. No one cared. Until he took a risk. He forwarded the file to the organizers of the International Harmony Gala, the biggest classical stage in New York. No resume, no family background, no conservatory paperwork. Just the audio. 2 weeks later, a letter arrived in his email. She was invited. Kind of. No press mention, no official program listing. A rehearsal slot only. Early morning, private audition. Preliminary observation, they called it. Daniels didn't tell her the conditions. He only said, "You've been heard." Amara smiled faintly. She didn't ask what she had to play. She didn't ask who would be watching. The morning of the audition, she arrived at 7:45 a.m. No welcome, no nameplate, no waiting room, just a man in a gray suit, sitting at a folding table with a clipboard. The piano? An upright kawai with a cracked middle C and one squeaky pedal. Amara stood still at the door. She placed her cane to the side and slowly walked forward. The man didn't greet her. He didn't look up. He just gestured vaguely. She sat, took a breath, then placed her fingers on the keys. She didn't play Bach. She didn't play the composition Daniels had suggested. She played herself. Each note rang like an unspoken confession. The lower keys shook with tension. The higher ones stretched, strained, like reaching for a memory not fully healed. Halfway through, she paused for 2 beats. The man finally looked up. Then she continued, with a broken E that didn't fit the scale, but fit the pain. When she finished, there was no applause, just the sound of the clipboard sliding across the table. "Thank you," he said without emotion, then stood and left. That afternoon, an email came in. "Thank you for your time. You will not be included in this year's performance." No reason, no feedback, no follow-up. Amara stared at the screen, then closed the laptop. She didn't speak. She didn't scream. She walked back to the basement that night, opened the same upright piano, and played something softer than usual. A lullaby no one had ever taught her. She played for herself. But what she didn't know was that someone had filmed her that morning. The janitor, an older black man named Eric, who had been cleaning the hallway, had paused outside the door, phone in hand. He hadn't meant to record it. But when she started playing, he couldn't stop. He uploaded the video that evening to a forgotten YouTube account with 10 followers. No filters, no thumbnail, no edits. Just a caption. "Blind girl rejected." But listen to this. He didn't expect much. But within 72 hours, it had over 5 million views. And suddenly, the world that had refused to hear her couldn't stop listening. It started with a single share. An old retired jazz teacher in Atlanta reposted the clip. "This made me cry. I haven't cried for music in 20 years. Then a violinist in Toronto, a deaf composer in Manchester, a music blogger in Chicago. Within a day, classical forums across the U.S. lit up with one question. Who is she?" The video wasn't flashy. No lighting, no stage, no crowd. Just a blind black girl in a dim room, playing a beat-up piano like it was the last conversation she'd ever have with the world. The title was simple. Blind Girl Rejected by Conservatory. Plays from the Soul. The comments flooded in. "She's more honest than anyone I've seen on a stage." Why was she denied? This is why classical music is dying, because they keep locking the real voices out. In less than 72 hours, the video had over 5 million views. It was reposted by musicians from New York to London. Clips aired on underground radio shows and independent YouTube channels that focused on black talent, underdog stories, and injustice in the arts. Suddenly, Harmony Conservatory wasn't being praised for its prestige. It was trending with hashtags like "Blind Black Girl Rejected," "Leather Play," "Harmony Failed." The pressure mounted fast. Emails poured in. Petitions formed. The Gala organizers were contacted by publicists, media outlets, and even music historians demanding answers. Still, no response. Until finally, under intense public backlash, the International Harmony Gala released a short statement. "We are pleased to welcome Amara Bell to open this year's gala performance." No apology. No correction. Just damage control. They placed her name quietly at the top of the program. No bio. No image. Just text. Opening act. Amara Bell. No orchestra, no accompanying conductor. No professional rehearsal. She was to walk on stage alone. The message was clear. You're here. But don't expect a warm welcome. Reginald Ainsworth, the same pianist who had mocked her during rehearsal, wasn't pleased. He saw her name on the program and snapped. "You're letting her go before me?" he demanded during the production meeting. "She's not trained. She's not certified. She's a charity act." The director replied calmly, "You're free to withdraw, if you like." Reginald's lips tightened, but he didn't leave. Because even he could feel it. The momentum had shifted. For the first time, it wasn't about who had the cleanest technique or the longest resume. It was about something raw, something real. The night before the gala, Amara sat in her hotel room, staring into darkness. Not because she couldn't see, but because she was remembering. The long nights with broken keys, the rejection letters, the laughter in the hallway, the moment her fingers first found notes that didn't judge her. Professor Daniels knocked gently and stepped inside. He handed her a small card. "Your program slot. Your first." She touched the paper and nodded once. He started to leave, but paused at the door. "Tomorrow, don't play for them." "I won't," she said softly. "I never did." Outside the hotel, cameras waited. News vans, bloggers, local stations. But Amara didn't speak to any of them. She didn't need to. Because the moment she placed her fingers on those keys again, the entire world, the one that once ignored her, would be forced to listen. And this time, they wouldn't just hear music. They would hear every door that had ever been shut in her face. Crescendo Hall was packed. Rows upon rows of donors, critics, industry giants, all dressed in black tie elegance, whispering into crystal glasses. But when the announcer's voice came through the speaker, "Opening performance, Amara Bell," the whispering stopped. No applause, no welcome, just stillness. From the side of the stage, Amara stepped into the light. No stylist, no glam team, no orchestra, just her. Blind, black, alone. Her white cane tapped against the floor, once. Then again, then stopped beside the Steinway D274, the largest, most expensive concert piano in the world. She placed her cane to the side, took one breath, and sat. The audience shifted. Some leaned back. Others waited to be unimpressed. Backstage, Reginald Ainsworth stood with his arms folded, watching like a predator waiting for the first mistake. But she didn't play Beethoven. She didn't open with Bach. She didn't choose any of the names that earned applause from tradition. She chose herself. Her hands hovered, then dropped. The first note wasn't sharp. It wasn't loud. It was long, a low G that held in the air like a breath being remembered. Then silence. Then two scattered notes, like someone trying to speak through tears. And then music. Not classical. Not clean, but human. Her left hand played like it had weight to carry. Sorrow. Rejection. Rage. Her right hand floated like it had been waiting a lifetime to fly. There were no words, but the story was clear. It was the sound of a girl shut out of rooms, the sound of hallway whispers and locked practice rooms, the sound of laughing students and teachers who saw her as a checklist, not a chance. Every note challenged them, not politely, not aggressively, just honestly. By the third minute, no one was adjusting sound levels. No one was breathing loudly. The lighting tech hadn't moved his hand from the dimmer switch. Even the string players backstage, used to tuning their instruments through every opening act, stood still. And Reginald? He didn't blink. Because he recognized what he was hearing. Not a student. Not an activist. A truth. He had played to dominate stages. She was playing to survive them. At minute 5, Amara struck an off-key note on purpose. It didn't belong. It didn't fit the harmony. But it felt real, like a scar that refused to fade just because it made someone uncomfortable. The hall didn't flinch. They felt it. And then, silence. She didn't end with a chord. She ended with stillness. Her hands rested in her lap. Her face calm. She didn't bow. She didn't smile. She simply stood up, picked up her cane, and walked off the stage. Not a single person moved, until the back row, an elderly black woman in a navy blue dress, slowly stood to her feet. Then 2 more, then 5, then everyone. No one clapped for performance. They stood for what had just been confessed, what had just been forgiven, and what had just been remembered. Backstage, Reginald looked at his own hands. They were trembling. For the first time in 20 years, he was afraid to touch the piano. Someone asked if he was ready for his set. He didn't respond. He just stared at the stage. Professor Daniels, watching from the wings, didn't say a word. He just closed his eyes, because he knew the performance was never meant to impress. It was meant to break something and rebuild it. When the director came forward during intermission, he asked her one question. "Was that your piece for the gala night?" Amara tilted her head slightly. "No," she said. "That was just the warm-up." The room froze again, because if that was the warm-up, what came next? But no second performance was scheduled, because sometimes the point isn't what happens after, it's what's never forgotten. Later that night, social media exploded. Amara Bell. She played truth, silenced by notes. Clips of her performance circulated faster than news coverage. People didn't just share the sound, they shared the feeling. And for the first time, classical music wasn't trending for a celebrity scandal or viral stunt. It was trending for silence. A silence that had finally found a voice. Amara didn't wait for the press conference. She didn't return for a second song. She didn't stay to meet the donors, or shake hands with the board, or pose for the cameras that lined the exit. She simply walked out the stage door. No fanfare, no lights, just her cane tapping against the sidewalk. By the time the audience had left the theater, she was gone. In the days that followed, media coverage exploded. News anchors called her the soul of the gala. Columnists debated whether her performance had redefined what music meant. And social media? It didn't stop. Millions of people reposted her clip with captions like, "She didn't just play, she exposed the silence." Blind, black, brilliant. She said everything, without saying anything. But Amara never replied. She didn't appear on talk shows, didn't sign with a record label, didn't post on any platform. She vanished, quietly, the same way she had arrived. No one knew where she went, but the effect she left behind, it stayed. At Harmony Conservatory, a shift began. First the emails, then the phone calls, then the meetings. Parents questioned why the school had never embraced students like Amara. Donors threatened to pull funding. Alumni sent open letters demanding change. And finally, after years of protecting its image, the conservatory responded. They announced a new initiative, a dedicated space for students previously unqualified. No audition requirement, no legacy letters, just music. They named it the Bell Room. No portrait, no statue, just a small sign above the door. She was never invited in, but she held the key. Inside that room was a piano, not polished, not perfect, but always open. Students began leaving handwritten notes on the piano bench. "I was told I'd never be good enough, but she proved we belong. I learned to hear myself, because she did." In Chicago, a public school launched a program called Hear Me, using her performance as the first lesson in their Black Excellence in the Arts series. In Toronto, a deaf student played a recital using vibrations he memorized from Amara's clip. In London, a blind girl named Eliza played the same opening note Amara had used, a low G, during her first live competition. She didn't win, but the audience stood up anyway, because now they knew what that note meant. And Reginald? He stopped performing. He declined interviews. He cancelled his European tour. For months, no one saw him. Until one cold winter morning, a staff member at Harmony Conservatory noticed him standing at the back of the bellroom. No one spoke to him. He didn't sit. He didn't play. He just placed a folded letter on the edge of the piano. It read, "You reminded me what music is supposed to do. I forgot, but you didn't." No signature, just a postscript. If they don't open the door, play anyway. Somewhere outside the spotlight, Amara lived in a quiet town near the mountains. No stage, no audience. But every few weeks, a letter would arrive at a school, or a community center, or a forgotten music program, with no return address. Inside would be a sheet of music, handwritten, raw, personal, sometimes titled, sometimes not, but always ending with the same line: "You are not invisible." People started calling them Bell Notes. Not official, not distributed, just stories, told through sound. One was played at a memorial service for a teacher who'd been the only black instructor at his school. One was played by a little boy with autism whose mother said it was the first time she saw him smile through music. One was found taped to a practice room door at Harmony, where a new blind student had just arrived. No one claimed to know who left it, but everyone knew. Because the girl who had been mocked for daring to touch the Steinway had never wanted applause. She wanted to give others permission to feel, to exist, to be heard, even if no one was listening yet. And long after the echoes of her performance faded, the silence she left behind still spoke louder than any standing ovation ever could.